sometimes these simple exercises can yield big results in the end when you start to apply sometimes the knowledge or the skill or just the perception that comes from exercises, what they can yield in your own efforts when you start to apply it. I want to just show you a variety of works here real quickly. This is Emil Carlson. What I love about Emil Carlson is his spatial arrangement of shapes and sometimes the simplicity of a subject matter. Here's a very simple seascape, lower horizon line. There isn't a whole lot of blue of the sky that is revealed. A few spots, if you kind of consider just simplified it there. You've got the moon itself right here, and you've got this wonderful reflection on the water. But that is a very simple statement that sometimes can yield a great dynamics, and it's all about spatial arrangement and almost, if you will, think about abstract shapes. Some of these images are going to be much more recognizable, but here's Fritz Thöle, a Norwegian artist, and here he uses a higher horizon line, if you will, and there's kind of an odd view of just the back of a bunch of buildings here. They all have these wonderful geometric shapes of windows and different textures. He's bringing alive the buildings through texture, through value, and through windows, various, again, horizontal or horizontal, with squares and rectangles, I should say. And then you have an area back here that goes to sky and later values that kind of connect right to this water wheel that come down into this beautiful rhythm of movement of water. And if you think of it, it's just a very abstract scene that has recognizable elements to it, but it's all about how he took these particular shapes and composed them in such a way to get the results he was looking for. Here is the title page. It's Chauncey Ryder. I love Chauncey Ryder's work and also his abstract expression for the type of realistic subjects that we all love to paint. I know I've got some students that are thinking more abstract, and so I'm sure you will find these to be, or some of his works to be very delightful and very informative. But look at this wonderful big shape here, dark, with all kinds of wonderful other colors and paint approach. Sometimes that's what makes a painting like this work even that much better, is the kind of beautiful application of the paint against a very simple stated sky down to a further back hillside and a very low, if you will, false horizon line with all the other wonderful chips of colors and shapes that make up a building or a number of buildings and a road and maybe other expressions of other foliage that maybe isn't as grouped together as this is. Just a beautiful expression of shapes and spatial arrangement on a particular format. Here is Dean Cornwell. Dean Cornwell was a great illustrator, and if you think of the positive negative shapes here, the dark shapes, I have to get this tool a little smaller, the dark shapes that run through the composition, so a few light shapes that come out, few medium value shapes that come out of here, and then and here's some more dark value here. Look at this beautiful abstract, and then within that you have other subtle shapes and values that take place and create the scene. But if you think of it and squint down, it's a beautiful abstract painting. I'll put this into a I'm just going to go to a blur. I'll go to a lens blurring opportunity. Let's see if I can get it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to say fit on screen. And now let's go to a lens blur on this. And you can see immediately, as soon as I start to lose the identity, you start to go to more of those big abstract shapes that I just pointed out. The more I go, you can see just more dark areas here, lighter values here, and where you put some of the color is surrounded for the faces are surrounded by dark values. So we'll get back to more clarity and back to the original. So let me get rid of that, and let's go to another one. Here's Edgar Payne. Let's put Edgar Payne's piece in a blur, and let's see what that does. Let's just go to, I'm gonna have to go to a regular, let's see, where's my, try to find my, okay, blur gallery here. Yeah, here we go. Trying to find what the blur that I had before. Well, wait. Trying to figure out where was that here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Sometimes forget where all these elements are. On screen. Let's do a blur on that. And here again, blurring it out is almost like squinting, and I do that a lot, and I suggest many times with my students to do that so you can see some of the positive and negative shapes of your scene. I'll do that even before I select the scene and find what's interesting. By doing that, I can see big shapes of light versus a little bit lighter color, and especially a lot more chroma and color and other shapes coming in. And then I can move to the right, left, top, or bottom in my composition and find something a little bit more interesting if I don't feel that this is appropriate. So you can see by again going to more clarity, then you see all the little nuances that sometimes in the very beginning we miss the idea of finding a great composition. Let's go to Lucy Kemp Welch, and she loved doing equine. I love this scene of this mare with their foal and just the interaction here of this wonderful shape of the light working against the little foal here, and then you've got the verticals of the legs, the little foal's legs, and the subtlety of the mare's legs. And then you have just the other shapes here, these light shapes up here, all blend into that light of the horse. And then you have this wonderful lyrical, almost line shapes that work throughout on the left side and pick up subtly again on this side. And some other wonderful shapes here that come in, and you start to break it down into its most simple puzzle shapes. It's amazing how these, or I should say, it's amazing how positive and negative, if you start thinking of that, how it really holds together all the detail that we're sometimes looking to put down first. We need to really get that design, to develop that design first. Here's one of my efforts, some pigs in a resting in an area, and the light is streaming through from the left through the fences here and coming across the pigs, and here's a big light area out here, but you can see all the, again, light and dark shapes, the abstract elements that kind of make up the whole scene to begin with. Another one is this kind of an unorthodox view of looking down at lily pads And I think I've showed this a couple times before. I'd been painting lily pads that day and looking out normally across the pond, and then I looked down and happened to see this scene right where my easel was set up in the water. And I came back the next day and did a small study, which this was then a larger painting, but it was the abstract shapes and looking for these interesting positive negatives that pull together sometimes the scenes that are right in front of us. And you can, by thinking that way, you can come across, or you can start to come up with much more interesting compositions. Here's one more of an interior in Chioggia, Italy. Stepped into a cathedral and saw this wonderful vaulted ceilings that the architecture was revealing, and then the light. The light wasn't that luminous. What I did is I took the composition and added a lot to the scene to make it what it was. I added all the warm notes here. There was no priest in the background. I added this priest by an altar with lights and the whole idea there was to work against all the cools that I saw in the cathedral to begin with. I'm assuming at some point when they did some services and so forth, when they lit up the candles, this is pretty much what you would see against all the cool light that was coming through the ambient windows above. And here's one in the back, a stained glass window that was allowing some of that light to come through. But it was more, again, of the abstract shapes that really got this particular scene in my... That's what interested me to begin with. What I did with the color temperature was a bonus to the abstract scene to begin with. So what I want to do is show a simple, this is what I've done numerous times, excuse me, with students. When I teach a class that's considered it's called composition and brushwork. And what I do is I have the students, what I do is I give them a sheet of paper and I have 3 shapes on it. I have a circle, I have a triangle, and then I have a square. And then what I have to that is I have down below, I have a number of different formats. Formats that normally artists would be painting to 9 by 12s, 12 by 16s. Here's going to be a little bit more of a longer format. Here is a square, much more of a square. And let's do one more that's maybe more of a vertical 1:2 proportion. So now what I do is I tell the students to take each one of these elements and place it in here. And that's all I tell them to begin with. I don't tell them any more. And usually what I end up with is I see something like this, where they will take they'll take the elements and they'll place them in like this. And I'll tell them just to do that in each one, and this is kind of what I get. And so forth and so on. They'll continue with the other formats. Occasionally, what I get is students that start to do, whoops, I start to lose this. I start to get this, where someone will do this, and then they'll do this, and what they do is they will put the shapes kind of almost touch, they touch the edge and get a tangent. And then they'll do that in some of the other formats. What I learned years ago in doing something like this was the idea of doing that, taking these simple shapes and start to be more creative and doing something like this and saying, here is the triangle, but I'm just using a section of the triangle. Here is the circle, and here is the square. I'm just using a section of the square. In doing that, I made some interesting shapes out here and here by taking each one of these three elements and putting them, overlapping them, using a section of them, letting some of them run beyond the compositions, or beyond the, I should say the compositions, beyond the borders, and you start to come up with really some interesting shapes. Now let's say if I keep this on and I run this behind, and then again maybe I take the square and I put the square in here, but I don't show the whole square. Now that could be an interesting statement. I could take each time I'm doing this, I'm finding something interesting and unique to the use of those shapes within the format, and it's a lot of fun to play around with what could be. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of interesting things where you have more of open area versus the shapes that you're putting in. And to this, let's say you were putting texture or line or some kind of pattern to this. And this isn't even working with color. Let's say you put color to it. So you could add color shapes and so forth to these elements. Let's just find a color. I'll grab a red here and grab a big tool, and let's just say I put a red here. Let's grab a yellow. I'm just going to work with the basic primary colors here: yellow, red, and blue. Let's go with a kind of a turquoise blue. Let's go with the blue around the outside edges here, and we'll leave the white remaining inside here. These little exercises create and the concept of finding interesting shapes within a given format, given that you have certain shapes to begin with, and you have to come up with something very interesting. And just opening them, I'm sure just what I've done here just kind of opens the door to your thinking. What I've done after I explored these types of exercises, it helps me when I'm starting to look at compositions. Let's say, like, let me go to that one of Fritz Thöle here. And when I start to think of this, the abstract shapes that are all up in here versus the other shapes that are down below in the reflection, or even going to the one that I did here. Some of the abstract shapes here of the light pattern against the actual object of something that is more recognizable, the pigs in this sense. Or the dragonflies, another one where you start to think of the shapes, the positive things running off, so things that are, some of them are in shadow, some of them are in light, some of them are casting shadow. These are just exercises very similar to this. It's just that here there's no recognizable elements other than shapes itself: round, triangle, square. Try this and try some different compositions, from square to rectangles to verticals to horizontals, and then to that you can take, if you want to just go with a grayscale and add just a gray value to the shapes, and come up with interesting value studies that Let's see if I can find, let's see, where's my black? So I'll put a black, let's say we go with this all black. A lot of times artists they just want to paint, and they completely forget about the importance of value studies or shape studies or compositional type opportunities. And whoops, yes, I think that's a little bit later. I wanted something just slightly later than that other one, so that there's some commonality to enough. I had these black lines out of here. All of a sudden that becomes kind of an interesting shape. I can start thinking of how I would take a landscape or a seascape or a still life and how I might put together certain elements, or how I would maybe allow positive and negative shapes to better work for my to my benefit. And again, going to I can't think of his name now. Going to this particular artist's work and seeing the positive negative shapes of how he placed these figures in here with very little. There's not a lot of detail. You can see the faces, but even the man's face is very simple shapes to it. But there's just enough identifiable shapes, abstract shapes, that you can make out the arm and the hand. And then, of course, the woman's dress flows down into the bottom area here, which becomes a real interesting object against some of the negative shapes and positive shapes of color and in the background. So think of these exercises, how they may be able to help help your compositions, help your spatial arrangement thinking in different formats. It can be a lot of fun. Try it, see how you like it, what you come up with. Take care for now. Bye.
I've been teaching art workshops for over 20 years. Prompted by many students' requests, I created this particular Study to Studio course. This course is developed for either the indoor or outdoor painter. The translation from a reference study to a larger studio painting has always been a challenging process. In this 4-week course, I define the tools of my trade, my palette, and an important color mixing demonstration. I will take you through the same exact process which has proven to be successful for me in the studio, including various creative options that will improve the results of your studio efforts. My process of teaching is wrapped around the sound and historic foundations and principles that are the guidelines that defines quality art. I feel confident and believe that you will discover this course to be very beneficial to your future artistic development. Tucson Art Academy's online courses is the new way for art educational opportunities. I hope to see and work with you in this new online course.